And we'll take calls in the not too distant future. Second topic, Fonterra. I mean, these are obvious this week. If ever you were going to come in here and spend a couple of hours, then today's this week and today is a great time to do it. Fonterra. Did it terrify you?
Well, worried and worries the hell out of me. I found out Friday night, so I'd been at a dinner, and I had to have my phone off because I was at this dinner. And so by the time I walked out, there was about a dozen or 18 text messages on my phone, and so usually that's not good news. And so I sort of went through all those, and we started, government had already started from when it first was advised at lunchtime at MPI, but ministers started throwing to action. But I mean, when you think about it in these terms, the words infant baby formula and botulism are not made to go together, and basically food production and dirty pipe. So I don't care what anyone tells me, nothing good comes from this. But having said all that, I think also there is a need for a little bit of perspective, which is, do Fonterra have a systemic problem? I'll be surprised. We're going to have a proper inquiry, and we're going to hold their feet to the fire, and hopefully, and I think Teo as chief executive will do the same to his own organisation through their own inquiry. But in the end, they have to have a culture within that organisation that says there's no room for error and no mistakes, and that food safety is paramount. Because this was 38 tonnes of whey. If you think about that, that's less than a lorry load. So you can't tell me a company like Fonterra that produces that much is going to put its entire reputation at risk for 38 tonnes of whey. Now, there'll be lots of things I don't know today and you don't know, and exactly, maybe where they did all these different tests they did and it showed something, maybe that's a bit more normal than we think. Maybe in a living kind of product like this that produces bacteria, maybe that is one way it works. But anyway, look, I actually think they've had a long history of producing a lot of food extremely safely. People link these other issues like DCD and Sandler, but actually it's not quite fair. And hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this, understand that something's gone terribly wrong. Quite what?
Are you happy with the way they've handled it?
Could they handle it better? Probably. But it's one of those things where they've got to make their own calls. We don't run their company for them. We don't run their PR. I think we can all have a view on what they might have done better. I'm not critical of John Wilson, but I am a bit surprised he didn't front earlier, because I know him in the capacity of being Prime Minister and having a lot of dealings with him, and he's a thoroughly thoughtful, bright and articulate guy. So I actually think it would have made a lot of sense for Fonterra to have him out there, as opposed to, it's not,
that's the chairman.
The chairman. It's not a guy they have to hide away. Teo, in fairness, was in Europe because he texted me on Friday night.
Do you know why he was in Europe?
I don't.
See, this is interesting. Nobody knows. I'm about to tell you. He was in Holland attending the funeral of his father-in-law.
Right.
And he dropped everything and went to Beijing.
Right.
And I think he deserves credit for that, under those circumstances.
And again, I don't want to prejudge all of this stuff, because there's always going to be people who say, oh, well, the National Party loves, Fonterra and somehow isn't going to hold them to account. That is not true. We will be absolutely holding them to account, and as the regulator to, effectively the Ministry for Primary Industries has legal obligations to see whether Fonterra has observed its legal responsibilities, etc. Plus, whether we like it or not, Fonterra is the poster child for New Zealand. Lots of New Zealand companies trade off the reputation that Fonterra has driven of very high quality food. So when it goes wrong for everybody. But on the other side of the coin, I think he did exactly the right thing going to Beijing. And we just need to understand, I just need to be able to sit there and look down the barrel of Chinese TV and say, this was the issue. Sometimes these things happen, but it ain't going to happen again. And
is there a danger in that?
Well, there's always a risk, but I mean, it's the question is there absolutely zero tolerance for food safety issues right through that company, in the same way that I think we would argue Air New Zealand has zero tolerance for anything other than perfection when it comes to aircraft safety and maintenance and looking after and observing the rules when they fly properly. Now, that's been driven in the culture because that's everything to an airline, and I suspect that it probably is like that in Fonterra. I suspect there'll probably be some really good explanation of what went wrong. I just don't have that today, and I'm not going to guess one.
How long do you expect it to take? Because time is of the essence.
I think a while. I mean, I understand Fonterra have set up 2 inquiries. They'll want to get answers pretty quickly. John Wilson, the chairman, excuse me, down seeing Stephen Joyce and a couple of other ministers in Wellington formally again today. And there's been a lot of correspondence and communication, obviously. Some of it informal, but it's also important that there's formal discussion.
And you and China an apology? I have let me just before you answer, I have an email here somewhere from a couple who live in China, New Zealand couple living in China, been there for some time, and explaining to me how the Chinese behave, react to such things and what have you. The only thing that they beg of you is to go to China and make a public apology. They say that's the only thing that will overcome this, will overcome it in the best way. Now, the question is...
Yes, well, I actually don't happen to disagree with that. I mean, so to give you an example, earlier in the week they asked me, well, would I go to China? Would the government send ministers to China? So Murray McCully's due to be up there in about a week. Tim Grosser, as Trade Minister, will be up there within the next month. And I said, yes, I probably will go at some point soon. Now, I actually found out I've had a breakfast, a morning tea yesterday where there were a lot of Chinese people who were there, and they brought to the meeting to show me printouts of the social media sites and the Chinese media, and it's the same thing with our MP Zhang. He sent me a whole lot of stuff yesterday. And interesting enough, this comment of me saying I would come to China has actually turned around the social media sites from being very critical to being much more balanced and supportive. And secondly, it's dominated a lot of the media over there. Why is that, you'd say? And the answer is because they want to know they're getting all the information. They want to know the government is absolutely on top of the position, and they want to know we treat them with respect. So my view would be, when I can have the answers that can say, look, I understand what went wrong, and I'm confident that it won't happen again, or we've done everything we can within the realms of probability to fix this issue, I actually think it does make sense to go up, spend a bit of time going through the media and offering an apology. I think that makes sense, but I just need to get all the facts before I do that.
All right. So we'll come back and do GCSB shortly. Sure. It is 27 after 10 News Talk ZB.